What's up, friends? John here, and in this lesson we're going to get deep into Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton so that you can put this beautiful tune into your songbook. It's got some tricky parts, there's no doubt about it, but I'll show you a few tips along the way to make some of the more complicated bits a little bit easier to get down on your guitar. Thanks to our sponsor, Black Mountain Picks. I love playing with a thumb pick, but I was always frustrated with the fit and the shape of the off-the-shelf picks, and I searched for years to find one that I liked until I found this self-adjusting pick from Black Mountain Picks. Cole and the team nailed it. They have different gauges and shapes so that you can dial in your own personal taste. My favorite is the jazz-tipped pick. It is perfect for me as a thumb pick, but its familiar shape really helps me switch to flat picking parts on the fly as well. You can learn more about these picks at the link in the description. Thank you, Cole and Black Mountain Picks, for sponsoring this lesson, and now let's unpack Tears in Heaven. There is a lot of the song that is packed right there in that opening intro. In other words, the skills that we're going to use to play that intro, we're going to carry them throughout the song. Our first move is a fun one, that hammer on from the open 6th string up to the 2nd fret and then the open 5th string. And you'll notice that I'm using a thumb pick here, but you could use your bare thumb. And also notice that I'm already in place to do what's coming, right? Even as I start the song, this is my position on the picking hand here. I've got my index finger just resting on the 3rd string and my middle finger resting on the 2nd string. That way, when they're ready to do their job, they're right there. And this is the first job that we give them. We're going to hit the A under this bar at the 2nd fret. That's the 3rd string. Then we're going to do a little hammer-on pull-off, cool move on the 2nd fret, or 2nd string up to the 3rd fret, and then back to the 2nd, and then back to the A note on the 3rd string. Really cool hook, probably the most recognizable part of the song. And then what we're going to do is move into this chord shape and playing the 6th string and strings 3 and 2. But now let's talk about this chord shape, because this might look terribly uncomfortable or undoable for you. And if that's the case, you can just modify it to use whichever fingers really feel comfortable to you. Notice this sounds the same as this. You get the same sound, so go with what works. As a finger picker, I've found it's helpful to bring my thumb on and play a bass note whenever I can. But if that's not for you, you can play it this way. I did for years. My one tip for you is, if you're going to choose a way of playing it, keep it consistent. In other words, a little bit later on, we're going to play down here. So you wouldn't want to try to switch, and play it with different fingers. That might just confuse things, and you'll get further faster if you hold things the same. You'll see we'll even come down here with that shape. All right, so once we're there, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pluck the 6th string and these two. And notice that these 2 strings that we talked about in the beginning that are sitting at the 3rd string and the 2nd, these 2 fingers rather, index and middle, they need to just kind of be together. I'm holding them closely together. I mean, they're touching, and I'm just kind of viewing them as plucking as a group. They're together. Yeah, we're going to separate here and there, but for the most part, these 2 pluck on strings 3 and 2 together. And right here, once we get to our shape, which is a D chord, by the way, with our, this is actually an E, but a D shape with our 3rd in the bass, what we're going to do is pluck 6, 3, and 2, those are the string numbers, and then the 6th string by itself, and then 3rd and 2nd strings by theirself before changing down to an F minor chord. And this is another instance where you could play this in a variety of ways. You could play it like this, right? If you're good with bar chords, right? An F minor bar chord there. Or I like to play it like this, where I'm barring across the strings at the 2nd fret and I'm using my middle finger to play the bass note. Of course, you could stick with what works if you're a thumb person like this, and just drop down and play that. All right, but however you get there, these are the notes. And once we're there, it's and of 4. We don't play anything on the top of the next measure. We just let this ring. And then we start this alternating with the thumb and these two fingers as a group. Right? And then this next rhythm, we're going to change chords here, and I really want you to pay attention to this rhythm. I'm going to my thumb over the fretboard shape here, so regular old D major chord, but put that third of the chord, the F sharp, in the bass. That's at the second fret. Same thing we did up here, right? And then this is the rhythm. This is important. It comes up a lot. All right, so that's together. There's three strings we keep talking about, 6, 3, and 2. Then 6 by itself, and then 3 and 2 by themselves, and then back to 6. Right? We're going to use that rhythm a lot in this arrangement, so get used to it. But here, we're going to go a different direction. We're going to pick the thumb or whatever finger off of the 6th string and play the 6th string on beat 3 with strings 3 and 2. So it's a D with an E in the bass. Then we're going to drop the index finger down from the 2nd fret to the 1st. Do that again. So we kind of just give ourselves a break from that cool, tricky rhythm and go 3, 4, 1. That's where we're headed, just an A chord, but playing the bass, 5th string with the thumb, and then these two fingers doing, you guessed it, the 3rd string and the 2nd string there. And then here comes that rhythm again, where we've got together, bass, and then alternating it. All right? So here it is in time. All right? And this is where we move ourselves back to the verse. So keep those things in mind and practice the intro enough to really get it down, because everything that we use there is going to translate very well to the verse. So you can hear how that intro is a perfect setup to the verse, and there's so much carryover. The melody is really just fleshed out to take care of the vocals. All of this is the same, but here, instead of doing this sort of stately ending, right, what we're going to do is drop down and play the A again, right? Here we go, back to D, then the A. But with the A, you could put the 5th string in the bass, but it sounds really good to have that E droning on there. And did you notice that rhythm? It's that same picking rhythm that we covered heavily in the intro, right? But then after that, we end differently than the intro. Right here, and I'm slowing down to call your attention to it. What we did is climb from this E, but I'm really just playing our two favorite strings here, 3 and 2, with my index and middle finger as that unit. And I'm alternating, right? So this is kind of making a statement as I play this twice, then come up and bar at the 2nd fret, then bass, and then come up and play this little shape here. The B on the 3rd string, 4th fret, and the D on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And with that hanging, you really feel that the need for our little hook there. So here's the verse played slowly. The course starts out with a minor chord, an F sharp minor chord, and be sure to bring whatever form of the chord that you chose to use earlier in the tutorial. Bring that with you. We can play it here. No use trying to change and do something different. So let's have a look at the picking. All right, for this measure, we've got the thumb doing the 6th string, and we've got this same setup that we had before, where the index finger is on the 3rd and the middle finger is on the 2nd string, right? That's home base for this, and really for much of the song. First, we're going to pinch the 3 of them together, and then we start our alternating back between bass and melody notes. So that kind of doubles up on the thumb here at the beginning. Right? That's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the only thing that I do differently on the fretboard is for the and of 4, I pick up and play the open 6th string, and that's a great moment to get out of this position and find our next chord. Now you may recognize this. It's the same chord form that I used earlier. Up here are E over G sharp. We also used it here as a D over F sharp. And again, bring along whichever way you choose to fret this. What we're doing here is just bringing it down to the 1st fret, 6th string, right? So however you choose to play it, we're actually playing a C sharp over E sharp here, all right? And the picking pattern is going to be the same as what we did on the previous measure. From here, we're going to continue that picking pattern, and we're going to lift up and play an A7, but we've got our E in the bass. We've been doing that a lot when we get to A. We've been playing the lower note as the bass, the E. So what we're going to do here is the same picking pattern. Right? And notice that in these two measures here, we didn't do anything different for that note that is the and of the measure, right? The 4 and. We didn't pick up. We didn't do anything different right here just before the chord change. Next measure, we're going to need a new chord shape. And this one, I do suggest that you play like this, right? It's basically our bar, F sharp, but we're lifting up the little finger to expose the 4th string under the bar at the 2nd fret. And that's going to give us this nice dominant 7th chord sound. The picking here shifts from strings 3 and 2 as a pair of strings that we kind of work together as a unit with the picking hand. We're shifting down to a different pair of strings, just to the 4th string and the 3rd string, right? So what we're going to do here is revisit a rhythm that we've played before. So we're plucking all together. This is all under the chord. Then we're playing the bass, the chord, and then back to the bass. Then I need to bring this B note in here on the 3rd string, 4th fret. So I'm going to pinch that with my bass back to the 6th string bass, and then play the 2nd string under the bar. So that's at the 2nd fret. And you can hear the vocal melody really taking you to this part. Right? And we can let that hang before changing to another new chord, B minor 7. But here we go back to strings 3 and 2 for our picking, sort of our locked in picking as a unit approach here. And we shift to the 5th string bass. So this should feel somewhat familiar to you. All right, I'm holding off for that last note. It's really fun to throw it in there, but let's make sure we've got the rhythm on this B minor 7. We're pinching bass by itself, plucking bass, pinching everything, bass, and then plucking the chord tones. All right. And we end with that low 6th string hanging out there. And then we've got one of the coolest moves in this. It's after the vocal line says, I don't belong, you get this, I don't belong. That little move is brilliant. It's really just starting from a D chord, and we're going to pluck up, right, with that attack. Notice that the first one, there's a little break in between the two. It's not this. I want to get that little stop in there, right? Not quite staccato, but you definitely hear a break between the two. Then go back to the 6th string, and then back to our little partial D chord here, and let it ring. And then from here, we go into the intro part that basically sets up future verses. The bridge is a really interesting part because we actually move into a different key. We modulate into the key of G major. And we do this after one of these little intro bits, right? Although it's not technically the intro, of course, because that only happens at the beginning, but that same piece of music is used throughout the arrangement to glue the end of a chorus to the beginning of a verse. So we're doing that here, and as we're working through this measure over A, the very end, we move into the bridge with a C major starting point. For this measure, we're walking up into our C major and then arpeggiating the chord, which just means that we're picking the chord tones. We start with the 5th string, open 3rd string, then the 1st fret, 2nd string, and back before shifting down on the 5th string to the 2nd fret. And what we're really doing there is setting up, you could see it like that, we're setting up a G chord, but we're just keeping that 3rd in the bass. As a lot of these chord voicings do, they have the 3rd in the bass. And this is where we do that over G, right? And so that carries us up through the and of 4, and that beat, the and of 4, in a lot of these measures has been treated with something special, and this is no different. We're going to go to our chord change here, which I think is really interesting to go before the beat, right? And then we wait for beat 1 of the next measure. We just let this ring before arpeggiating our A minor chord. Just a little back and forth on the 3rd string, 2nd string, and then back to the 3rd. The chord change from A minor is this that we've seen before. This is a D over F sharp, right? So we're going to pluck, kind of like we've been doing a lot so far. We're going to pluck the bass along with our 2 important strings for this tune, right? The 3rd and the 2nd string, and then arpeggiate that just by picking those 2 strings, one after another, back to the bass, and then here we go into a full G chord. And we're just going to pluck with the 3rd string in the bass, and then kind of revisit that whole rhythm again and lock in with our picking fingers. Change chords. Same picking move, right? Where we pinch, bass, melody, bass, and now we're changing chords again. We're moving into an E minor. So we're going to pluck 2 open strings here. Doesn't take any fretting to make this happen. We've got the open 6th string and 3rd string, and then bass. But we do want to work in the D, so this gives it more of an E minor 7 vibe sound, and then back to the bass for this chord change. So this is back to our D over the F sharp. That's plucking and then bass by itself. And then finally for the 4th beat, we're going to go back to a G chord. Notice I don't need this finger on the fretboard. You can put it there if that's just familiar and comfortable for you. I'm going to but I'm plucking that same set of strings, 6, 3, and 2 here, under the chord. And for this form of the G, by the way, I'm playing the D on the second string. So this is what the part sounds like. The second part of the bridge really takes a very similar tack to the chord progression is the same, except at the end where we move away from that E minor sound and we go back to E. And this is kind of the part that gets us back from the key of G, and we're now going to shift back into the key of A. So let's take a look at this move. So here, after our D over F sharp, we end this measure with an open 6th string, that open E note, and then we start on beat 1 with a big E chord. I'm going to pick the top 3 or 4. Top 4 works as well, and then we're going to basically do that climb that we've done before. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and right. After that climb, you can go back to our familiar hook and play the verse piece of music, which turns into really more of the solo or the interlude. The other thing that you can do is just play the open 2 strings. It's hard not to do this though. If you've made it this far through the tutorial and you're comfortable with the parts and you've got the vibe, you've got that rhythm down, then you're probably looking for something a little bit special, some special sauce to sprinkle on top of this arrangement. And fortunately, there are a few really tasty licks. They are understated but absolutely beautifully executed moments that happen in the way of a couple of fills and even that really cool understated solo that happens in the musical interlude. So let's take a look at a few of those. The first one happens in the verse here. And it is such a sweet part, and it can be a bit challenging to play. We're going to start sliding on the top 2 strings from the 5th fret to the 7th, and then back to the 5th. Then we're going to really replicate that in a lot of ways just on strings 3 and 2 here. And what's happening is I've got kind of that little shape in mind, that D shape that we've played so many times before here, but I tend to fret it this way for this part, just to keep loose and keep some fingers off of the fretboard and out of the way. So I'm playing it with my index and my middle finger, sliding up and then back down. Right? Back down, meaning to the A. Same 2 strings, 3 and 2, this time at the 2nd fret. And then back up before getting into this, which is really from a D major. If you're familiar with a D major's inversion, that's what we have here. We'll try it. So what we're going to do is pluck that, then the open 1st string, and then move into an A with that really cool move. We're just plucking the 4th string and the 2nd string, and then walking up on the 2nd string, and then finally the open 1st string. From that point, move your hand off of the fretboard, and we're going to get into this E shape to start this part. So that's the open 6th string, the 3rd string, the 2nd string, and then sliding on the 5th string from the 2nd up to the 4th, and then catch the A note on the 3rd string. Slide up again, but this time just 1 fret, and then you're going to land on the B note with your middle finger there. And then that should help you find your place. This is where we start the verse back over. And of course, there's another one that's very similar that you can do. It has a very similar vibe, but I like it just as much. Right? The back end of it is similar to what we just did, but this is very cool. We're just doing these plucks on the 3rd string and the 1st string here, barring. Right? So this gets really kind of a different thing going. Right, and however you choose to play that. If it's with thumb and index, that's cool. That's the move. We're barring, we're moving, and then we're hammering up from the 4th fret with this little shape. So on the 3rd string, we're hammering up a full step to the 6th fret, but just a half step to the 5th fret on the 1st string. Very cool as we move back down to that same sound, right, of E. And then we've got our little D move. And then we can end that with an open 2nd string for the entire 4th beat, or this for that really cool glue. The final thing that we're going to cover is the solo. Right, a really simple set of notes, but it's just beautifully placed and sounds really good in the context of the entire arrangement. This part is really, especially the first part, it's just this, just moved up an octave. We're playing at this C sharp as our starting point versus this one. And we're hammering up and pulling off just as we did before. And we're going to land on an A just as we did before. Just this one here at the 10th fret. But now this is different. We move up to that high E, hit it a couple times, and then come back to our C sharp before starting this really cool move here. And it kind of feels a lot like this as far as the movements that you'll need. So it's totally fine to bring your thumb down and pick the 3rd string with the thumb. What we're going to do is slide into the 11th fret and the 10th fret, and that's on strings 3 and 1, right? So we're skipping over the 2nd string here. And I like to use this little shape and these 2 fingers. If you want to use different fingers, totally fine. But we're coming back to the 9th fret, drop down to the 7th, and then here we got to change that shape to this, really from an A, right? There's an A major triad. So we're going to keep pinching. That's all we're doing here. All right, after this, slide up to the 9th and then back, and pluck the 7th. Here it is without talking. Beautiful. Thanks again to Black Mountain Picks for sponsoring this lesson. Pay them a visit at the link in the description, and good luck learning this beautiful song. Until next time, practice smart and play on.